Now, before I even begin, I want to start by saying I absolutely love these games. I've platinumed every single one. I played them the second they launched, pulled all-nighters, and had a great time. But you can love something whilst accepting it also has its flaws. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the slow decline of Insomniac Spider-Man, starting with the first game. Now, before Spider-Man PS4, the superhero genre didn't have a great library of games, and to be honest, it still doesn't. This is why the Arkham series has always sat proudly at the top. Games that changed the entire genre as a whole, developing a combat system that every game since wants to replicate, etc. And with Spider-Man's mediocre run of games, people were super hyped when the trailers and gameplay came out for Spider-Man PS4. Combat that looked as good as the Arkham games. I'm not saying it's better because I don't want to be killed. A comic accurate Spider-Man that had years of experience, all the different suits from the comics, the web swinging, the villains, the graphics, just everything about this game looked perfect. So when the game actually launches and it's just everything we expected and more, it's safe to say Insomniac cooked. Like a chef that had mastered the arts, Insomniac had created a fan favourite game, a fan favourite Spider-Man, but most importantly, a fan favourite Peter Parker. They really make you feel for Peter in this game, and it makes for a truly emotional story. The build up to Doc Ock was incredibly done, and even though we knew he'd become the big bad, it was done in a way where you thought maybe it won't turn out like this time. You can really feel the anger Peter and Doc end up having towards each other in the last fight. Doc because he wants to uncover the truth about Oscorp and give Norman what he deserves, and Peter because Doc knew his identity the entire time but still went through with making a virus that eventually kills Aunt May and really leaves Peter with absolutely nobody. The last fight was done so well, and the story as a whole was incredible, and I still don't think they've come close to nailing what made the first game so good with the other installments. Now it's time to move on to the other games. I will talk about these games separately, but for now I want to discuss something I call the Insomniac Spider-Man formula. Basically, ever since Spider-Man PS4, the story for both Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2 try to recreate the magic of the first story by trying to do the exact same thing, but it gets worse every time. In Miles Morales, they have Rhino/Roxxon as the mid-game villain, just like Spider-Man PS4 had Mr. Negative, but then the main villain ends up being the Tinkerer, who ends up being Miles' childhood friend Finn Mason. It's funny because the big bad of every Spider-Man game also helps you in some way to defeat the prior villain. Doc makes Peter some gadgets, Finn helps you take down Rhino, and Harry helps you take down Kraven by just straight up killing him, which moves me on to Spider-Man 2. Kraven is the mid-game villain, huge build up, going around literally killing other villains, gets beaten, and then Venom, aka Harry, who is Peter's childhood best friend, is the main villain. They also have that we was going to change the world dynamic that Doc and Peter had in the first game, and to me it's just a lazy attempt of trying to recreate the magic of the first game, and it just makes me uninterested in these two games. They don't stand out story wise, and honestly the gameplay is what makes these games so good. Now I'm going to talk about Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2 separately. First, we're going to talk about Miles Morales. To be honest, this game feels like a nothing game to me. I don't feel like much really happened in this game, and I think that's why it's got the reputation of just being a DLC. I didn't really care about Finn's character, so the last boss fight didn't have the impact they clearly wanted it to have. I did like seeing Miles come into his own though, making his new suit and just learning how to be Spider-Man. I also love the gameplay, the new electric powers and everything like that was really fun to do, well, use, but the story just wasn't it for me. Then Spider-Man 2 doubles down on the formula, and I just completely didn't care about the story after Peter lost the symbiote. I didn't care about Harry's character, they just kind of threw him in and said, this is your childhood's best friend, remember? Care about him. Oh, this boss fight is so sad because they're childhood best friends, right guys? It just doesn't work. Like, they've done it twice before, it doesn't work anymore. Again, I liked Miles' storyline with Martin Lee. I think it was really well done. The fact Miles has to work through his trauma and in the end makes amends with Lee shows pretty good character development. I also like the lead up to Kraven and everything to do with him in general, with him hunting down the villains, the whole lizard stuff and that boss fight. It's the last third that lets Spider-Man 2 down. It's just not too great. The pacing with Venom wasn't good, and Venom just didn't feel like Venom. He would constantly run away from the Spider-Men, and when he had an opportunity to kill them, he just wouldn't, instead opting to turn them into symbiotes. You also have MJ walking around shooting symbiotes, which is hilarious. How are we meant to take the symbiote seriously if a random woman is going around getting gold camo on her Glock and calling in Spider-Man as a kill streak? What I'm saying is, the last arc of the game isn't too great. The next thing I want to talk about is just Peter as a whole. I feel like Peter after Spider-Man PS4 just completely falls off a cliff. It feels like Peter just can't handle his own anymore in these new games. In Spider-Man 2, he's beaten way too much. It feels like Vegeta, it happens that much. I mean, he straight up dies to Kraven. He lets Venom just turn MJ into Scream. Like, why are you just stood there? Just do something. And all in all, he just doesn't have that aura anymore. This is the guy that put the entire Sinister Six away after they jumped his ass, gave him broken ribs and all sorts, yet he still pushed through and beat all of them. In the start of Miles Morales, I mean, Rhino literally knocks him unconscious and Miles has to defeat Rhino. It would have been good if they went the Spider-Man 2 route, like movie-wise, since Peter starts having these doubts about being Spider-Man, and if they had that affect his powers, then that would have made sense. It would have made him wanting to desperately keep the symbiote mean more as well, since it felt like it was making him a better Spider-Man, but they didn't do that. Without ranting forever, I just feel like Insomniac was pressured to release both Miles and Spider-Man 2 early. I think with more time in the oven, both games would have benefited a lot more. We're into late 2024 and still haven't heard about DLC for Spider-Man 2, and then obviously a lot of things were late feature-wise. There were a ton of things that had to be scrapped so they could meet the deadline, which is a shame. But you know, we can blame Sony, but Insomniac haven't really talked to the community about upcoming things. Like, we don't know anything about what's happening with Spider-Man 2. We still don't really know if there's going to be DLC, but I do think this is a good lesson for the higher ups to not force game studios to rush out games, because it's never worked out in their favour. There's never been a game do well when it's been rushed out like this. But yeah, those are my main nitpicks. Like I said, I absolutely love these games and I look forward to playing more in the future, and I hope they get the time they deserve, because there has been major improvements since Spider-Man PS4. The webbing is just the best it's ever been in Spider-Man 2. That paired with the web wings, oof, it's a match made in heaven. The combat is a lot faster and more diverse since you can swap between Miles and Peter. The gameplay in general is just fantastic, but it's the story that really impacts these games for me, and that's why I still hold Spider-Man PS4 in that #1 spot out of the trilogy. But tell me what you guys think in the comments. What's your favourite Spider-Man game? Do you think I was too harsh? Like I said, I do really like these games. Just because I said something negative about them doesn't mean I absolutely hate them. I just want the best for these games. I want them to shine even more than they currently do, and story affects that in a lot of ways, so I hope they can improve that in future. You know, the DLC for Spider-Man 2, if we do get any, I hope that improves a lot on the story aspect. But yeah, that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.